It's a happy new year for San Diego pot dispensaries as recreational cannabis goes on sale for the first time in California.
We just don't have enough. We don't have enough affordable housing.
It's a temporary solution to a growing problem. The last in a series of 3 large industrial tent shelters is set to open this week in San Diego.
Dogs are kind of in a natural state of presence, because ultimately that's what meditation really is having your mind fully in this present moment.
And a look back at some of our favorite stories from 2017. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Murphy. The new year ushered in new laws for California. One biggie, it is now legal to sell recreational marijuana in the state. As Steve Walsh reports, San Diego's handful of outlets are seeing a brisk business.
What do you guys like, indicas, sativas, hybrids?
Hours after they opened Monday, lines continued to form at Urban Leaf, where the wait time was over for legal recreational marijuana.
This Thin Mint, it's going to be one of my favorites in the store, regardless. Nice and pretty, nice and pretty.
Yeah. It's packaged up beneath with that blue dream right there.
Cool.
Los Angeles and San Francisco are expected to begin issuing licenses shortly.
Cash is king. Yeah. Cash is king.
For now, San Diego, San Jose, and Oakland are the largest markets in California where you can buy marijuana without a doctor's recommendation.
I think the market's definitely going to expand. A lot of people were waiting in the wings because it was illegal to actually purchase, and they were scared of going on a list by getting their medical recommendation.
Will Sen, the owner of Urban Leaf, says the bulk of his early crowd were people from out of state, suggesting San Diego may have another draw for tourists.
Just today, I was helping check people in, and pretty much every single person that walked in had an out-of-state ID, which was interesting.
Sen opened Urban Leaf as a medical marijuana dispensary in March. It was one of a small handful of shops in San Diego awarded recreational marijuana licenses who were available to begin selling January 1st.
We're out of drinks. Completely out of drinks.
He was caught off guard by the intensity of the first day rush. Long term, he expects to expand.
All right, fellas, we're sitting at 196.19.
Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
San Diego has about a dozen stores licensed to sell recreational cannabis, but it also has at least 3 facilities with licenses to manufacture cannabis concentrates. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains.
The California Department of Public Health is in charge of licensing cannabis manufacturing facilities, which turn the plant into oils and concentrates. Those concentrates are used to make a lot of the cannabis-infused drinks and edibles on the shelves of dispensaries. The department has issued licenses to 3 San Diego businesses, but they're only allowed to use safer methods of making cannabis concentrates with tools like carbon dioxide or ethanol. Extraction using volatile chemicals like butane has caused explosions at a number of illegal labs across the state. Those more dangerous methods are more strictly regulated for safety. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The city of San Diego is expected to open the last of 3 tent shelters for homeless people this week. The so-called Bridge Shelter will be located in the East Village and will provide 150 beds for families and single women for the next 7 months.
Construction crews are putting the finishing touches on a big gray dome set in a gated parking lot behind Father Joe's Villages. Meanwhile, more than 40 workers have been hired to run the tent. Supplies have been stocked up, and case managers are preparing families for move-in day.
Our hope is that we can start moving people in by late tomorrow to early Thursday. But that's assuming the fire marshal gets the blessing, everything's in place, and the city then okays it.
When the doors open, families will have access to an abundance of services such as meals, healthcare, counseling, and housing navigators. The facility is also equipped with bathrooms, showers, laundry, and 24-hour security. The city is funding $1.3 million to operate the shelter.
Air conditioning and heating system in it. I mean, it's you look at it and you say, well, this is a building. They're constructing it extremely well.
Vargas says a tent is not the most ideal home for children, but it's better than than their current situation. Some are sleeping on park benches or in cars. He says the goal is to cycle families into more stable housing as soon as possible.
But that is at the heart of the issue. It's those permanent dwellings. We just don't have enough. We don't have enough affordable housing.
He says Father Joe's waiting lists for its other temporary shelters are 200 names long. He says the homeless crisis didn't see much improvement in 2017.
I would love to say that it looks better. It doesn't look better. All right, and that's not what we're seeing come across our doorways and our threshold. In a sense, we see a lot of need.
Father Joe's Villages is planning to break ground a year from now at the site of the large tent on a 14-story permanent housing complex. KPBS has been following the story of a family from El Salvador who is seeking asylum in the United States. They had crossed the U.S.-Mexico border only to be separated, with the one-year-old child sent all the way to a detention facility in Texas. Now, human rights organizations are filing a complaint with the Department of Homeland Security. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero has more.
Last month, The Washington Post reported Homeland Security is considering creating a policy to separate families who arrive at the border to deter immigrants and asylum seekers from making the journey to the U.S. While the forced separation of families is not yet a federal policy, it's already a practice. In December, KPBS covered the case of a one-year-old boy taken from his asylum-seeking father. But 8 human rights groups have filed a complaint with the department, saying that family separation is, quote, so fundamentally unconscionable that it defies countless international and domestic laws on child welfare, human rights, and refugees, end quote. Erica Pinedo of the human rights group Al Otro Lado calls the practice alarming and disturbing.
Between the 8 organizations, we've documented close to 200 cases at the time of filing the complaint, and at this point, likely more cases of family separation.
Immigration and customs officials say this practice is for the children's safety because smugglers often pair children with non-parents. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
County officials say they are close to ending the hepatitis A health emergency, with just 7 cases reported last month. That's a steep decline from the average of 80 cases a month during the peak. But now county supervisors are discussing a potential new health emergency, the flu. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman explains.
I don't mean to take our attention off of this, but this seems to be yesterday's news.
Supervisor Ron Roberts is shifting the discussion from Hep A to rising flu cases in the county.
And I'm wondering if maybe we should be thinking about what's going on today.
This season, at least 3,800 flu cases have been reported, compared to around 600 the same time last year.
The reality is that we are having a much higher flu activity in our region.
County Health and Human Services says they have had early discussions about recommending a flu emergency.
It is still too early to tell if it's going to be a flu season that outpaces other years, or if we are merely seeing a much earlier spike than we are accustomed to.
In terms of the hepatitis A health emergency, the Board of Supervisors voted once again to unanimously extend it. Health officials say before the outbreak started, San Diego was averaging just around 40 Hep A cases a year.
We'll likely now expect that there will, quote-unquote, be a new normal, a new baseline. Now that this, if you would, virus is in our environment, I don't know that we're ever going to go back to where we were before.
Since the outbreak started in November of 2016, there have been 577 confirmed or probable cases of Hep A, with 20 related deaths. And the Board of Supervisors plans to discuss a response to rising flu cases next week. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Healthcare advocates are looking for ways to push back against the potential negative effect the new GOP tax plan could have on health insurance coverage. The uninsured rate is currently at 6.8%, a historic low for the state. But analysts say that could change now that the individual mandate has been repealed.
I think, folks in California have been looking for ways to get to universal coverage, and that's something that we've been working toward for a long time. And so I think lawmakers and, consumer advocates will be looking at ways that we can continue moving forward to covering the remaining uninsured in California.
Analysts estimate some 1.7 million Californians could be without health insurance in the next 10 years as a result of the repeal. As the opioid crisis continues, so does the challenge of pain management. Some pharmaceutical companies are developing abuse-deterrent opioids. From WGBH News in Boston, reporter Christina Quinn says it's one small step in a much larger battle, and some question if there's a solution or part of the problem.
Inside the pharmacy of Brigham and Women's Hospital, a pharmacist counts abuse-deterrent OxyContin. This particular pill is a formula that came out in 2010. It's harder to crush and snort. Dr. Issa is medical director of Brigham and Women's Faulkner Pain Management Clinic. He says these kinds of opioids could be part of the solution.
If I have that option of prescribing it, and there is availability of these two, one of them it's already available that may be abuse prone, but another one is abuse deterrent, I would probably choose the abuse deterrent.
His aim? Prevent people from turning into addicts.
At least 50% have taken those opioids from family or friends. So it means that if someone comes in and they prescribe an opioid, there is a very big chance, 1 out of 2, that this will end up in someone else's hands.
Over the past few years, pharmaceutical companies have been working fast to develop different kinds of abuse-deterrent opioids. One turns into a gel, so it can't be injected. Another will put a user into withdrawal if it is injected. It's too early to know what kind of impact all these abuse-deterrent formulas will have on the opioid crisis. But a 2015 study showed that the reformulated OxyContin, which led to a decline in abuse of the painkiller, caused a spike in heroin use.
Anybody who has an abuse-deterrent opioid can still swallow multiple pills and die of an overdose or become addicted to it.
Bertha Madras is a psychobiologist at McLean Hospital. She also just wrapped up work on the President's Opioid Crisis Commission and says there are other technologies that need to be considered, starting with something as simple as numbering every pill.
There are ways of identifying these pills at a submicroscopic level where you can code every single one and know what the source is.
As the FDA pushes for more abuse-deterrent formulas, cost continues to be a sticking point since generic versions aren't available yet.
Some of the newer drugs that may have less potential for abuse can be up to $100 plus, maybe $150. Even I've had patients that said they had to pay $300, $400.
For a month?
Per month.
With the typical copayment for oxycodone around $3, a 10,000% markup on a painkiller that does the exact same thing is a tough sell. And while Dr. Issa sees the value in abuse deterrence, he says it's just one piece of the puzzle. He's hopeful about other future technologies, like smart pill dispensers that notify your doctor when you took your pill. In the meantime, he wants to make sure everyone understands how abuse-deterrent drugs work.
Extremely important to educate prescribers, to educate patients and make them understand that these drugs, they still have the potential for addiction. All they do is they prevent people from taking them in a way that was not intended.
You can find more coverage on the abuse-deterrent opioids at WGBHnews.org. Governor Jerry Brown is expected to release his budget in the coming days. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks says it could include funds for a brand new community college, one that's fully online.
Last year, the governor asked the California Community College's chancellor to develop a plan for an online-only community college. The chancellor's office sent him 3 options: an online school fed by faculty and staff at an existing college, another staffed by a consortium of existing colleges, or a completely new and separate operation run out of the chancellor's office. No word on which option Governor Brown likes best or whether he'll follow through with funding. He must also find money to implement a new law that waives a year of community college tuition for first-time, full-time students. Brown's budget proposal is due January 10th. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the latest from Iran as nationwide protests rage for another day. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Fair and mild today in San Diego with not much of a chance for rain anytime soon. Brittany Boyer has the full forecast.
Hopefully everyone had a great Tuesday. I know for a lot of people it was back to work today. Looking at your weather headlines, we have a little bit of patchy coastal fog in store for tonight, increasing clouds later on this week, and if we're lucky we might squeak out a couple of showers next week. But for this week, the shower activity is to our north here, so just north of Los Angeles. That's where we're going to be dealing with the rainfall, so out toward the Bay Area. Unfortunately, here on the southern half of the state, this is where we really need the rainfall right now. You can see across our viewing area, dry conditions, for some areas even a moderate drought, and it's not looking like we're really going to have much rainfall coming up over the next couple of days, just increasing clouds. Mostly cloudy for tonight, a low 51 degrees, Oceanside 39, out toward Ramona mid-40s, and Mount Laguna we're looking at lows by tomorrow morning right around 40 degrees. As I mentioned, a lot of the moisture is just north of LA, so looking ahead at our Wednesday, some beneficial shower and rain activity happening for San Francisco, also out toward Sacramento. For us here, we're just going to have those low clouds in place and more cloud activity as humidity is a bit higher, so there's more moisture in the air right now. For tomorrow, Mount Laguna, high of 60 degrees, 76 in Borrego Springs, out toward Ramona, upper 70s, Oceanside, temperatures in the low 70s. Then as we head toward the later half of the week here, we're still getting gypped with the rainfall. That continues to stay well to our north, but we will have a bit more cloud activity again with more moisture in place. So looking ahead at the next couple of days here at the coast, no major disturbances. Temperatures will be staying in the 70s and also into the upper 60s inland. We'll see temperatures still trending slightly above normal, upper 70s by your Friday, and heading into the weekend, we'll see temperatures cooling off slightly by Sunday with a high of 72 degrees. Into the mountains, plenty of sunshine over the next couple of days, but also seeing some slightly cooler temperatures there and slightly cooler by the end of the weekend here in the desert with a high of 75 by the time we get into our Saturday.
There continues to be a push to find a storage site for radioactive waste away from San Onofre nuclear power plant. Unless there's an agreement, millions of pounds of the toxic material will be partially buried near the shoreline at San Onofre. Last year, KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma recently spoke to Tom English on the beach near San Onofre. He's a one-time advisor to former President Jimmy Carter on high-level nuclear waste disposal.
So you're a nuclear waste expert who's lectured at the White House on this topic. You obviously think this is a bad idea. Why?
So for several reasons. One is they basically are going to put the stuff into a thin storage container, which probably will have some problems with corrosion given this ocean environment here. The second idea is they're going to store it such that it'll be about 100 feet from the water and a few inches above the groundwater table, which is totally ridiculous. So what could happen is, as the sea level rises, what will happen is the bottom of the containers will corrode.
Dr. English, why do you think Southern California Edison wants to use this dry cask storage method and actually got the backing from the California Coastal Commission to do it?
What happened is our attitude towards storage of spent fuel in a fuel pool changed with Fukushima. We had two pools melt down completely, and this scared everybody and caused a big furor and caused them to want to do something better. So it is a very good idea to take the fuel out of the pool and put it into dry storage. It's just that the choices that they made here were awful, far worse than leaving it in the spent fuel pool.
You were also worried about Southern California Edison's San Onofre nuclear waste storage plan being especially vulnerable to terrorism. Tell me about that.
Well, if you leave the spent fuel in the spent fuel pool, you have two large concrete structures surrounding the spent fuel pool that will partially protect it against an attack. When you bring it out here in the ocean like this, near the ocean on the beach, what you have is no real protection. So terrorists can find this to be a fairly easy target. And if something were to happen here, we would evacuate about 50 miles worth of people around San Onofre, which would basically shut down the economy of Southern California.
So what are some of the alternatives, some of the options to leaving the waste at San Onofre?
There are three main ones. One is to simply move it to another Southern California Edison site like in Arizona. That way you'd be at least away from the beach, and it's already licensed for this sort of thing. Another alternative would be to move it across the street to Camp Pendleton, where it's surrounded by a bunch of Marines, and you wouldn't have any overflights of airplanes, so it'd be much safer there from any kind of terrorist attack. A third alternative would be to go to Yucca Mountain, where we know a lot about the geology of the area, and basically make a part of it into temporary interim storage. Then you could take all this waste and store it there for 100 years while they figure out how to solve the long-term problem. So I think 3 of those are much better than what we have here.
If a nuclear waste storage site away from San Onofre is not found, there's the matter of sea level rise. Projections show that this plant could be inundated by water by the turn of the century. What kind of threat does that pose both to human life and to the sea?
Well, if you have these canisters sitting in seawater, it's much the same as dumping the high-level waste into the ocean. And so this has a severe threat on both the aquatic life and human life.
And Dr. English, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Well, thanks very much. I enjoyed it.
Our San Onofre coverage continues on air and online at kpbs.org. You probably wouldn't be surprised to hear about another meditation class starting up in San Diego. Last year, we checked out a class that went to the dogs. KPBS reporter Claire Trageser shows us how man's best friend found inner peace.
Breath in and out. Open your eyes whenever you're ready.
Aiming for mindfulness and tranquility.
Could you feel that?
This group gathers weekly for a meditation class in La Jolla.
Bring it out.
But there are a few extra guests that make this class a little different. Yes, this is a meditation class for dogs.
They think it's a riot.
Julie Potiker is with her big shaggy Briard Madeline.
Yeah, you're a good girl.
And says she gets quite a reaction when she tells people about the class.
They think it's a riot and it's super cool. And then they want to do it too.
Potiker says the class helps her be more calm and that Madeline and her other dogs pick up on her energy.
How I mindfully approach what I think they need. If they're running to the door and they're barking, I can figure out, instead of just yelling at them, oh, is it anxiety? Are you nervous? Are you trying to protect me? You know, what's going on? I think it's just kind of a more humane, lovely way to be an animal owner.
The 6-week class is meant to help humans better understand their animals through meditation and mindfulness practice.
Welcome to our 4th week of our Well-Being for Dogs and Their Humans class.
The teacher, Amanda Rignalda, also instructs attendees on how to identify their dog's doshas, or 3 different energies believed to circulate in the body.
Because I have no idea what Eloise's dosha is, because she's just wackadoodle.
She's all over the place.
Knowing their dog's energy means humans can provide them with the appropriate sounds, touch,
massage down the snout,
and smell.
Like, look at Madeline, she likes that.
But when it comes to meditation, Rignalda says dogs are naturals.
Dogs are kind of in a natural state of presence. Because ultimately, that's what meditation really is having your mind fully in this present moment, releasing all the memories in the past and any apprehension or thoughts of the future. But instead, just being fully in that present moment. And dogs are so good and natural and instinctively able to do that.
The dogs are often so present and relaxed that they spend much of the time slowly drifting off to sleep.
Noodle and Kelly are here.
When a little dachshund named Noodle joins the class late, the dog's meditative trance is broken.
Welcome.
Rignalda says breaks in the dog's meditative states are also part of being present.
We just go with it, just like any other thought during your meditation or in the middle of a class. You know, I sometimes joke that if our minds would let us just emote more like dogs would, we would all be barking in class. We've just been taught to be more proper.
She's seen big changes in the canine attendees in just the short time that they've been meeting.
I've seen them go from quite reluctant and shy and reserved to much more comfortable in this setting, more comfortable with people coming up to them.
That also goes for her rescue dog, Pepper, who goes to the class.
the dogs have been really receptive and open to these new experiences in their life too, and you've just seen a calmness come.
But really, the class is more about making the humans calmer and teaching them how to better understand their dogs. Julie Potiker, the human companion to the big shaggy Madeline, says it's boosted their bond.
It kind of helps me remember to respect her as a being, as a sentient being.
By the end of class, all the sentient beings, human and canine alike, have explored their senses and sat in the present moment. No barking, no whining, just a present state of calm.
Deep breath in, sigh it out.
Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
The Well-Being for Dogs and Their Humans classes continue this year. We posted a link at kpbs.org. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.